morning, everybody. Today we're going to talk about biting off more than you can chew, which is exactly what CME Group did. So who is CME Group? We are the world's largest futures and options exchange, as just pointed out, 3 billion trades a year, worth over $1 quadrillion. We trade all the major asset classes. As an example, a farmer is growing corn. He needs to hedge his risk and make sure that his price of his crops stays stable. He comes to the CME to execute those trades. On the other side, a company like Kellogg's comes to us to make sure that their inputs for their cereal stays the same. And then there's the speculator in the middle who helps provide the liquidity for those trades. We're comprised of what are called DCMs, or designated contract markets. Back in 2007, exchange consolidation started. Companies started buying each other. CME purchased our crosstown rival, CBOT, and became CME Group. And then a year later, in 2008, we bought the NYMEX exchange in New York. And we're really there to provide reliability, liquidity, safeguards for the rest of the community. And we also have the largest social media following of any financial global institution, which is pretty interesting. So who am I? I've been with CME Group for 20 years. I started with an internship in IT back in 1996. You'll see this box of cables. That was my first job. I walked in on my first day and they said, unwind these cables, which was very interesting. I did such an amazing job unwinding those cables. My next job, I was given a CD with Windows 95 and told to install that in the entire company. So my summer was going around putting a CD in a bunch of machines. From that, I moved on to develop our first intranet with a group of other like-minded individuals, which led to managing CBOT.com. 2012, I moved to Northern Ireland, and I believe we have some Northern Ireland guests in the audience. And we opened a center of excellence there, and now my purview is over CMEGroup.com, our mobile apps, and some additional trading applications. 2014, I moved to marketing. CME is a little unique in that our web development and our AEM infrastructure is actually within marketing and not IT, which gives us a little bit more control, but not as much support. So just to give everybody a brief kind of overview of our landscape, this is what CME's digital properties involve. We have a number of websites, all of which are not yet under AEM's purview, but we're migrating there. We have a number of global sites, some educational sites, some mobile apps, and of course all the social media. So it's quite vast and expansive in what our remit is. So quick lay of the land technology stack. We're running AEM 6.3. We've recently migrated our hosting from Verizon over to AWS. We use Akamai. We're a big fan of Google Analytics 360, GTM, Optimize, Customized Search. And we're just onboarding Demandbase right now. For those who are not familiar, it provides some understanding of anonymous traffic to our website. So, business challenge. Our website has predominantly been an information dumping ground for the last 10 years. People in the company send us PDFs. They love PDFs. We have created almost 60,000 pages, we call them article pages, of these PDFs. It's basically a factory of sadness, is what I like to call it. We were based on a content management system that was open source, Java-based. It was called OpenCMS. I'm sure none of you have heard of it because they have maybe 2 customers. Sorry if you're an OpenCMS customer. But the problem with that is that there was no support. We didn't have a community. It was literally 4 or 5 East German developers. They had some forums that provided some basic support, but we were far and away their largest customer. And so the business had been coming to us and really demanding a new foundation in order to support what they wanted to do, and that was personalization. We had been providing the same content to all our customers, regardless of who they were or where they were located, and that just wasn't working for us anymore. They wanted us to be able to customize our site, and again, OpenCMS just wasn't something that we could do. We have more than 55% of our traffic on the website is global, yet we did almost no regionalization of our site. Everybody got an English language-based site, regardless of whether or not you spoke English. And so obviously that was difficult. And we knew nothing about our customer. Again, we were basically that dumping ground of content. People came to us, read it, and left. And so that was just not working for what we needed to do. And so we began looking at changing that content management system. So we started with the best intentions. We were going to keep it very simple. We were going to do a basic install of AEM, cut everything over, and it was all going to work smoothly. We had talked through it. We knew smooth was the answer, no problem. So we started planning in late 2010 to move to AEM. We started implementation in early 2011. Implementation planning, in 2011, and we thought the migration would take 6 months. So 2012, we started in earnest. Day one, we made introductions. We brought in some training, support. Everything was going great. Day two, full training starts. We'd flown people in from London, from all over the world. Off we go. Day three, I get a phone call, 9 a.m. in the morning from the security office. Please come downstairs. I go downstairs. There was an incident with our training staff. They were kicked out of the building. Everything grounds to a halt. Simple, out the door, right? So, not a big deal. We can overcome this. No problem. Now we're going to talk about the Great Migration. 2008, our web development staff was in Chicago. About a year after that, our senior management made the decision that we were going to begin migrating that development staff down to Buenos Aires with an outsourced team. So for the next 2 years, we outsourced all our development. We continuously flew down to Buenos Aires. We built out a full team. We got everything ready to go, start AEM installation. Our IT team says, you know what? We're going to move where that dev team is. So February 2012, I take my kids out of school. My wife quits her job. We moved to Belfast, Northern Ireland. She had no idea where Belfast was when we came home and told her we were going to do this. We did a lot of learning. We moved to Belfast. For the next 2 years, we built out a dev team in Belfast and started that AEM conversion. And as soon as we were done building out that dev team, our IT executives said, we're taking that team and we're going to put them on some other project. You guys can't use them anymore. So I moved my family back to Chicago and started going back to Buenos Aires for the next 2 years. So the takeaway here is changing your dev team 4 times in 6 years doesn't work. That's not keeping it simple. That's biting off way more than you can chew. Quality of the dev team. So during all this, we thought the best thing to do was start with junior developers. We'll just learn as we go. Everybody will mature together. We'll have this amazing product. We really looked at how can we keep this cost down because we'd been incurring so many costs moving this team 4 times in the last 7 years. And instead, all that causes is rework, rework, rework. We didn't have that expertise that knew what we were doing. We were learning as we go. Every single case that cost us more than had we just hired those senior developers and taken kind of that more experienced approach. We should have had skilled architects. We should have had that experience. We just weren't efficient at all. So we bit off a little bit more than we could chew with the migration and this quality. But we thought, hey, that's it. We're fine. Everything's good. But wait, IT says, you guys need to get agile. Prior to that, we were a very waterfall company. We wrote these humongous Word documents with requirement 1.1.1.7.6. I'm sure you're all familiar with those. Nobody read those documents to begin with anyway. So to get agile, what did we say? Hey, let's all take a class. So we all went to a 2 or 3 day class. We became certified Scrum Masters. We're now agile, right? We know what we're doing. We did stand-ups. We thought that was the thing to do. Everybody stands around for 5 minutes in the morning and gives a status update. Everything's great, right? We bought a bunch of Post-its, playing cards, all sorts of things following the rules. On top of that, IT says you need to have full code coverage and automated testing for everything that you write as part of this agile process. That could not have slowed us down anymore. That was not keeping it simple. So the takeaway here is don't pile on changing the entire methodology of a team that is, again, brand new when you're going to embark on this. So that's it, right? That's all the things that made it simple. Not quite. We need a new ticketing system during this. So here we come. We have to support this new process. Let's roll out a new ticketing system. We got to get rid of these requirements docs. So we brought on Jira. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Atlassian products, but we didn't have the time to put this in the right way. So we just installed it, started using it, and of course, since everybody had taken that Agile class, we all knew what we were doing. We knew what acceptance criteria was. Not at all. Not at all. And then they threw in Confluence too. Do all your documentation there. Don't write anything else. So we took away all the familiarity that CME had. New dev team, new software, new process. It's just not the way to go. But we thought, you know what? We can do this. We didn't bite off too much. That's it. No one's going to ask us to do anything else until, why don't we redo the design? Let's bring on a new look and feel to the entire website. And let's not do it before we start the AEM implementation. Let's do it right in the middle. So our site did look outdated. It hadn't been touched in a number of years. It wasn't responsive. It was hard to navigate. Everyone agreed it didn't match what our business strategy was. We're already touching the code. We might as well do this. It'll be easy, right? It was not. It was not easy at all. It created an infinite amount of complexity. Our QA staff, also in the audience here, was not ready to be able to test these new components, these new templates, these new responsive kind of views. We just weren't ready to handle this. We didn't know how to QA it. But we were able to roll out this kind of new look and feel, and we thought everything was going good. It couldn't get any harder. What we didn't do is we didn't do any research, right? We have a user experience type research group. We didn't use them. We didn't really have any use cases for these new components. We didn't talk to our customers to see what their needs were for this. We just took this pretty Photoshop mock-up and said, this is what we're going to start implementing. And all that did was cause confusion for our developers who had no idea how to implement this. There was, again, none of that design QA. So we really struggled, and we made these really complex Swiss Army components with these junior developers, and they really could only be used in a single way. So we were lacking so much efficiency. Then we started talking about our migration. So we drew a line in the sand and said, we are going to migrate this day. And that day came, and then on that day we said, well, we're going to migrate on this day. And we kept pushing the date out 7 times. And we kept realizing that by the time the 7th time came is that we weren't going to make any date. And so we decided to just draw that final line in the sand and take everything that we hadn't migrated and just dump it in a new template. We called it shoveling, because that's basically what we were doing. We were just shoveling this stuff over. That creates more problems than it solves. That shovel template today, 5 years later, still exists with pages that we still haven't migrated. It took 2 years to undo half of it, but half of it still exists. So the takeaway here is don't migrate your site over until it's absolutely ready. We also struggle a lot with our business users who wanted to do everything the old way. No one likes to lose something that they had, right? And so those teams were ingrained with, this is the way we always did it. And when you move to a new content management system, especially in Adobe, you need to shift your mindset. You need to change the way you thought you were doing things to a new way of doing things. And half of that challenge is educating those senior people that these things have to change. It can't stay the same. Now, just when you thought it couldn't get any more complex near the end of the project, they came to us and said, everything that you're doing has to be regionalized, which I don't think they understood what they were really asking for. CME controls 98% of the US market. All of our growth is in Europe and Asia right now. And so they came to us and said, you need to take this site and make it in language, in region, for 9 different languages. That's real easy to say, but incredibly complex to actually execute. There are so many different nuances between these languages and these countries that you have to think about. What did we say? Sure, no problem. Sounds like a great idea. We bit up more than we could chew. We ended up just shoveling all these regional sites over, again, into this pile. Going back to our team, this whole time we had felt the philosophy of, we don't need an expert, right? We're all smart individuals. We can figure this out. We did it in this open CMS-based system. We can do this in Adobe. And so we said, we'll just hire a couple of senior people. We'll do some training. We'll know everything. We'll know how to do it. Again, we hired junior people, not those senior people. We're going to save a bunch of money by just training them up. We couldn't have been more wrong. We had absolutely no best practices. We had no understanding of how this was going to be, how it was going to work. It was basically trial and error at its absolute worst. Those senior architects that exist on our team now are the ways that you can prevent reinventing the wheel, right? They have done this so many times before. It is imperative now, looking back, that we have those senior people to show us those best practices. Even at twice or triple the cost, they're really going to save you that time and effort from redoing that. The mega template. So we didn't have these senior people, so we thought, well, what if we took what the business requirements was, it used to be this way, it has to be this way, I can't live without it unless it's this way. I have to have this. Okay, so we had an existing template, we had no best practices, we just kept extending it and extending it and extending it. We called it the mega template. It allowed for extreme flexibility, it could do everything, it could make coffee, it just handled everything. But what that provided to us was just a completely watered down design. It didn't take the inherent look and feel that the designers had intended, and instead just made everything seem very not good looking, is the best way I can put it. So, what did we learn from all this about biting off more than we can chew? Number one, don't let fighting get in the way. Check that ego at the door. You need to understand that you don't know how to do this, and you need those experts to help you. Don't have a dev team that hasn't worked together, and don't underestimate those time zone impacts. Our business remained in Chicago, but the dev teams that we built out were in Belfast. And if you're not familiar with Belfast, it's about 6 hours ahead, and so we only had 2 to 3 hours every day of Chicago overlap. So because of those time zone differences, items would go at the end of the day and flow over to the next day, and then somebody would respond, and it would be the next day. And so instead of understanding what that impact would do, our time frames actually tripled. Saving money isn't always the best driver. We learned that the hard way. We picked a lot of cheap options up front, and all that caused us to do was have rework after rework after rework. And going back, we spent almost 3 times our budget from what we originally had anticipated to the end, specifically because we had to do so much of that rework. So don't always look at the bottom line as that first driver of how we're going to make these dates and how to best implement that system. Can't not stress that enough. Easing into new team dynamics. As we talked about that great migration, you see we moved 4 different countries within those 6 years. It takes 6 months to a year for those team dynamics to gel. These were all new people who had never met each other. They had never worked together. We had never worked with them. They weren't familiar with CME. There is a large ramp-up period that people don't often talk about that is imperative to understanding the ins and outs of a new software system. So must ease into that. Obviously, this last point here, don't pile on the kitchen sink. We just kept saying yes rather than pushing back on our management. Yeah, we can do that. New design, fine. New team, new location, great. It wasn't. Limit the scope. That is absolutely one of my strongest points. Don't skip the research. We now have a pretty robust user experience research team at CME. We provide a lot of input, the voice of the customer, prior to doing any of this work. We attempt to test all this work that we build before we launch it now with actual customers, and we find so many different issues that would have made it into production that don't now because we have that voice of the customer and a strong user experience team that is actually providing that input. Don't pick arbitrary dates. We kept drawing a line in the sand and saying, well, we have to launch this date for no reason other than somebody was giving us pressure to launch on that date. And like I told you, we moved it 7 times. So you need to have a date that's realistic and obviously padded. One thing that we did learn, though, is to embrace the new. Everything was new. And I think we learned a ton by having a mindset shift to embrace that new. So I challenge everybody to do that as well. Stepping into regionalization is also important. You can't take a brand new site and launch it with 9 other regional sites. You really need to get that first site out, Learn from your mistakes, learn from your successes, and then after that, work to slowly roll out that regionalized site. Don't try and bite off all that at once. And finally, hire experts. We learned the hard way, as I mentioned. We went the inexpensive route, but now as we've redone this team for the 4th time, this last time we had learned our lesson, and we hired senior people in every aspect: front end, database, back end, management, people who had been through AEM rollouts before. Hiring those experts is what you need in order to solve these problems. So what's next? The analogy we've been using at work is if anybody's familiar with the Chinese bamboo tree. And when you plant Chinese bamboo, you have to water it every day, you have to fertilize it constantly, but nothing comes out of the ground for 5 years. And so I feel like for the last 5 years, we have been watering our bamboo. Our senior management walk by, and they say, "What are you guys working on? I don't see anything coming out." But we have these dev teams working extremely hard every day. And what's interesting about this bamboo is that when it does come out of the ground, it then can grow up to 90 feet in just 5 weeks. And so we are at the cusp of, we have been watering for 5 years. And just now, as we finally migrated, we finally built a stable team, we finally have learned all these lessons, our bamboo is starting to come up. And we're moving incredibly fast. And our management is now seeing the fruits of all the work and the development that we've had. So, what's coming in the next year? Personalization. We now understand through demand base who our anonymous traffic is going to be, and we can customize that experience on our site using AEM. We are now doing a large amount of account-based marketing down to the individual who comes to our site. So whether you realize it or not, over the next coming months, almost every person there will have a customized, personalized experience, which is very valuable to us. That customization will be omni-channel, so it'll work across desktop and mobile, tablets and phones, which is very exciting for us. But all of this login and personalization and customization goes to the heart of the fact that we can now data mine. We can now understand the segments of the customers who are coming to us. We deliver the content they were looking for, not in PDF. And we now have an understanding of that single view of the customer, which is the most important thing that we can provide to our management, is an understanding of that customer. And so while we had to water for 5 years to get to this point, we are incredibly excited about what the future holds for CME and the use of our partners, and it's been a success. So despite all that, CME has successfully done this implementation, and we're pretty happy with it. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Great, great. Wait, hold on. Not so quick. Not so quick, Franco. Let's go back up for just a quick second. So, does anybody have any questions for Franco? I feel like this was extremely helpful advice. Any questions? Oh, come on. There's got to be something. Oh, yeah, right here. Right here.
I just wanted to understand, since you've been working on this project for 5 years, then and you mentioned that your senior management always kept asking, what are you guys up to? How were you able to show value, or what you will be able to do? As in, there must have been some milestones during those 5 years, right? As in, if it's such a long project and obviously cost, resources are being put to it, you have to show something tangible in terms of value, right? So how you were able to do that during those 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. Along the way, we were able to begin to slowly start to show the analytics, right? We would show how the user engagement from a mobile page, now that a template is responsive, the time on the page went up, the bounce rates went down. So really the analytics is the best answer I can tell you, was to prove using numbers how that engagement would be. But it certainly wasn't easy. We took a lot of heat for having to go that long, but I would say analytics is your best bet.
So CME's basically a monopoly. So you can get 5 years. Most companies probably couldn't. If you hadn't had some of the missteps or all the missteps, 5 years would have gone to what?
I think we could have done this in 18 months. I think we could have really cut it in more than half. Moving those dev teams was really devastating to the ability to provide continuity, because every time we'd have to move a global location, you lose 6 months to go move there and begin to hire. I moved to Belfast in 2012, and it took us almost 16 months to hire 200 people. And so that time was basically lost. There's almost no development during that time. So I think we could have probably cut a half to 2/3 off that time had we followed all these kind of lessons learned ourselves.
Hi there. Are you guys still working in an agile workflow and using Jira and Confluence as tools?
We are. We still do our daily stand-ups every morning over the phone, albeit. We still use Jira and Confluence. We've actually rolled Jira out to the rest of our marketing organization. So our creative services team uses it. Our support teams use it. Almost everybody in marketing now uses it. And we were the first team to roll out Jira at CME. And all 1,200 of our IT staff use Jira as well. So it's a great tool. The integration with Confluence is wonderful too. Yeah, it's been great.
Now that you're through the process of implementing AEM, are you at a point where you could digest other kind of products or services from Adobe, or are those even relevant to kind of what you guys are trying to do?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at a number of Adobe products. Just last week, we had some talks about their analytics platform and their Marketing Cloud platform. We're certainly looking at rolling some of those additional products out. Like I mentioned, Demand Base is just coming on, and we're also rolling out Domo by the end of the year to get a better dashboard view for those who aren't as technical and have the ability to log in and use Google Analytics. They wanted something a little bit easier on the self-service side kind of model. So we're looking at Domo as kind of that central customer platform to report back. But we're definitely looking at a number of other Adobe products.